Director Wes Ball has been talking a bit about Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and a new interview with Empire Magazine has dropped some interesting new details about what we can expect from the next installment in the franchise. If you like what I do here and want to show your support, be sure to hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on all things apes. Enjoy the video. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Ape Nation, your #1 source for all things Planet of the Apes on YouTube. My name is Josh, and I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving if you celebrate. If not, I hope you had a great Thursday and are having a great holiday weekend. Today, I wanted to do a little video talking about this new spread in Empire Magazine that had an interview with Wes Ball talking about Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. If you want to read the interview for yourself, I put a link in the description of this video. And for those who have not read it, I'm going to read through it here first and then talk about some of the quotes. And there's some interesting new stuff, interesting new details that came out about the movie. So I'm just going to get right into it. This won't be too long of a video just because there's not a huge amount of stuff that came out of this, but what we did get I think is pretty interesting. Through the 2010s, the Planet of the Apes series got a thrilling new lease on life in a fresh trilogy, a cerebral, emotional origin story for the rise, dawn, and war for the Planet of the Apes, though not necessarily in the order indicated by those films' titles. I don't agree with that. I know a lot of people agree with that, but that's a topic for a different video. They served as both somewhat of a reboot and a prequel to the original sci-fi classics, and now a new era of apes is ready to unfold. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is set to pick up the baton from where Matt Reeves left off, exploring the middle ground between the Caesar trilogy and the timeline of the early films. And while it's continuing the spirit of what Rise, Dawn, and War achieved, Kingdom is set to chart its own course. Quite literally, as it turns out, as director Wes Ball, previously behind the post-apocalyptic all-action series The Maze Runner, tells Empire in the 2024 preview issue, his sequel of sorts is an adventure movie tonally distinct from the darker impulses of the recent trilogy, while hoping to retain what made those films so special. Here's the first quote from Wes Ball. "When I first started on it, I said, I feel like Apes needs a little bit of Star Wars," says Ball. "It's all still very grounded in reality, but it is essentially a quest narrative. Our main character, the young, impressionable Noah, meets characters along the way and becomes awakened as he winds up in a place that will test him, and he ultimately becomes his true self. Not to say it skews hugely younger, with Ball still citing Apocalypto as an influence. We haven't kidified it or Disneyfied it, if I'm allowed to say that," he elaborates, "but we have brought a younger spirit to it. Most intriguingly, it's a whole new era of apes in more ways than one. I wanted to do a big leap forward in time," Ball reveals. Without specifying exactly how long Kingdom takes place after war, it's significant enough that Caesar is still a spirit in the movie, but most of his living relatives are not in this picture. If the last 3 movies were the Stone Age, here we get to see what happens when they enter the Bronze Age. So I'm just going to focus on each of the things that Wes Ball said about the movie. The first thing that I think was interesting is the Star Wars quote and talking about the tone. So it's an adventure movie, tonally a little bit more distinct from the darker impulses of the new trilogy. I personally have no problem with that. The original films, while dark in theme and dark in concepts and dark in terms of what they were about deep under the surface, they were movies that 9 and 10-year-olds went to see. And I like that we're kind of merging our way from the darker, more intense Caesar trilogy and going more towards that traditional adventure film, that adventure sci-fi type of tone. I like that we're heading towards something a little bit closer to that while still staying tied to what we know from the other movies. I like that a lot. I think that's a natural progression, at least in my opinion. It sounds like it, and it seems like that way from the trailer, is that it's definitely not quite as dark, but it's still retaining a similar feel, just with a new lens, so to speak. I'm all for it. And then as for the Star Wars quote, obviously he didn't really say what he means by that, so it's really up to anyone's guess what he really means. A little bit of Star Wars. Some people have taken it really deep and gone, is, you know, maybe Noah a descendant of someone who isn't Caesar? Maybe he's actually a descendant of Koba or something. I don't know about that, but I will say, hearing the Star Wars quote definitely gets me thinking maybe there's a little bit more to where the characters are going to go and where they come from than I originally thought. And I'm interested in seeing what he means by that, but I also think he might just be talking about the tone, because when you look at Star Wars, at least the original trilogy, it's very swashbuckling adventure. It's very sci-fi, fantasy, fun action adventure. I know a lot of people like to think that Star Wars is like this dark, gritty thing, but and it can be gritty and dark, but at its core, it's adventure, it's fun, it's action-packed, and I think that's probably what he's more talking about in terms of like the tone and what he's going to bring to it. But again, he very well could be talking about something else, but that's just what I took away from it. But I will say it does make me wonder if maybe we're going to get into some like, who is my father, where do I really come from type territory, which I didn't think we were going to get too into the weeds on, but I think maybe after hearing that quote, that is something that intrigues me a little bit about that. So in that regard, I'm definitely really fascinated. And then the next quote, when we talk about we haven't kidified it, we haven't Disneyfied it, I'm just going to put this out there right now. I'm not one of these anti-Disney people. I have my own problems with them, just like I do with most studios, but I'm not one of these they're going to Disneyfy and ruin it people. So I was never really worried about that. Him saying that just again cements what I assumed, which is that it's not going to be Disneyfied, just like Avatar: The Way of Water wasn't Disneyfied, just like Prey wasn't Disneyfied, just like all these other Fox movies that have come out in the last few years and part of these big franchises, they haven't been Disneyfied. So I'm not worried at all. And just hearing him say that again cements my belief that no, we don't have to worry about things like that. And the kidified thing, like I think it might skew younger. Again, we have a young protagonist, we have a more action adventure tone, but it's still going to have dark themes, it's still going to have dark moments, it's still going to be intense, it's still going to be taken relatively seriously, at least from what I've seen and what he's talking about here. And I'm glad he said that, because I've definitely seen a lot of comments worried about that, and so I hope that will quiet some people down. I know some people are just going to not believe that, but that's totally fine. And that the whole, like, we brought a younger spirit to it. I like where we're going with this. It kind of gives this new series of films a fresh start. It's still taking place in the same world as the other movies. It's still following what they did, but it's giving it its own new kind of life, and I'm excited about that. And then the last bit he talks about is the time jump. When he calls this the Bronze Age, as opposed to the first three movies, which are the Stone Age, I love that quote. I think it's really interesting he says that. And it really does make me believe that this is definitely at least 100, if not more years later. Again, he doesn't specify the amount of time, but I like that he specifically calls it the Bronze Age. I don't think he was actually giving it labels, like this will be like what it's called in like the lore or anything, but I definitely think that can continue on and we can see different ages of the apes as we see more and more of these movies. And I will say the one quote I found really interesting is that he says it's significant enough that Caesar is still a spirit in the movie, but most of his living relatives are not in the picture. He doesn't say all, he says most. So that is what makes me curious, is if we're gonna see like Caesar's great-great-grandson or something, which I'm really interested in. And also it could mean that Noah isn't actually related to Caesar. I think if that happens, it's gonna be a secret that's revealed later in the movie. But he says most of his living relatives are not in this picture, and it makes me wonder if maybe there is another character who's actually still related to Caesar in some way that is gonna show up. So I thought it was interesting. I could just be overly reading something that isn't there, but that was my takeaway. So again, these are some of the quotes from Wes Ball in the new interview with Empire Magazine. Not too much to go off of, but I thought there was enough here that I wanted to talk about it. Nothing too deep, but some fun little new tidbits that we hadn't heard before. As always, I'm super excited for this movie. I can't wait to learn more about it. Can't wait to see more footage. If you had any thoughts on these quotes, if you disagree with me about the Disneyfied thing or the Star Wars stuff, let me know what you thought of this article, what you thought of what Wes Ball had to say. And once again, I hope you all had a really nice Thanksgiving and are having a great holiday weekend. Thank you so much for checking out today's video here on Ape Nation. If you liked this video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on all things apes. I'll catch you in the next one. So until then, goodbye.